I think introspective awareness, learning to find a time and a place to be by yourself and understand who you are and how you operate and have some quiet time by yourself is one way. Therapy is another. Finding good group of peers and mentors to surround yourself with. It's very important that you surround yourself with quality people. You become a byproduct of the 6 people you hang around with most. And if the 6 people that you're surrounding yourself are assholes, you're going to become an asshole.
Hi, everyone. This is Joshua Hoffman, and welcome to another episode of the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast, where we deconstruct the why and how agency owners found their success, and in Season 4, understand how we can help provide referrals to our guests and how they can help other agencies. Today, I have Deevo Tindall, the CEO, or as you said right before our call, the Chief Experience Officer in this case, as well as the executive, of Fusion Creative Branding, a branding agency that provides customized solutions that help businesses stand out and achieve their goals. Welcome, Deevo.
Welcome. Thank you.
I love your name, by the way. I don't think I said that on any of our calls. I think you're the first Deevo that I've ever spoken with. So I know we got Deebo Samuel on the Niners, but where I want to dive in where I want to start is I want to dive right into it because while doing some research, I noticed that you write life is fleeting a lot. So I guess I just want to kind of ask the question, like, what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, this conversation we're having right now, if it wasn't being recorded, how many people would be able to hear it? And we've had 2 conversations of that nature where a lot of things were said that might have been keepsakes, might have been memorable, might have been something you wanted to reference. I mean, that's why books exist. That's why movies exist. That's why video exists, because we take these moments and we freeze them for posterity. And life is fleeting, and every single day something is happening in our lives. And so for me, one of the beauties of social media and my profession is that we have the opportunity to create something for someone else to enjoy, or someone else to be inspired, or someone else to be educated, or in my case for photography or video, I create things that people can use for business, for memories, for love, for whatever it is. And in that fleeting moment, it doesn't exist anymore. Like, it happens and it's done. And so if someone isn't there to document that and preserve that and heirloom that, it's gone. So it's fleeting. It just disappears. And so the beauty for me of my profession is that I get to capture those fleeting moments.
Yeah, I forget who like another podcast or something I was listening to, and they say that they won't go on radio because radio, especially, most things are turned into podcasts now, but they won't go on radio because of that exact reason that, now it's just the content that was given at that time. You can't really save it and watch it later. But when you have some kind of, whether it's a photo, whether it's video, whatever it is, it has the same value it does 10 years from now if someone wants to watch it. So
maybe even more value. Maybe
more value, right?
even more. I just came from lunch with a client of mine whose father is on his deathbed, and whatever memories she has been able to collect of her father, if he does pass away soon, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, her grandchildren, her kids, whatever, like, that is all that will exist of him. And so, yeah, maybe even it might even have more value. And that's not to say, I think we should discuss this, if I may for a minute. That's not to say that being in the moment and present and mindful doesn't have its value, because there should be a balance of that. All I'm suggesting is that in those moments where things are going on, it's nice to be able to have the opportunity to capture them, because you never know when you might need them for some sort of future use or some future memory, or just a preservation of the heirloom capacity of something. And so, I have videos of my kids since my daughter turned 18 this past weekend, and she had 30 of her high school friends over here. And I had a video running on loop of every moment of her entire life since she was born. From the day she was born, I've had videos, I have photographs, I have letters, I have literally everything. And I had like a 20-minute video running on a loop on the big screen in the main room. And she was like, had never even seen half of these things. And like, people were crying, and just like, it was just like crazy. And so, like, life is fleeting. So it's our obligation to preserve it.
And I guess, speaking of kids, you mentioned the last time we spoke that you have 12 siblings. So what was
11.
it like, and what did you take from it, growing up with so many siblings, that maybe you brought to entrepreneurship or maybe leading a business?
I have 11 siblings. I'm the 12th. I'm
Oh,
actually
that's right. That's right.
I'm actually number 6. I have 9 sisters. So for one thing, it's enabled me to get along with the smarter sex a lot more capable than most men I know. Because when you have 9 sisters, all completely different personalities, like you basically get thrown into the boiler room of figuring out the fairer sex and how to navigate the maelstrom of chaos that they bring to men. So, well, how has it helped me in my business? I've never really analyzed it. I guess for me, 12 children, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of chaos going on, a lot of different personalities. And in our case, everybody fighting for attention and just trying to kind of have a place in the family to be observed and acknowledged and validated. I think it's enabled me to, from a social perspective, I'm really good at connecting with people, and I think having access to all those different personalities has helped me for that. In terms of an entrepreneurial space, my dad was an entrepreneur, so I picked up that. I don't know if I got that epigenetically or that was just something I picked up, but he was an entrepreneur. So every one of my siblings is also an entrepreneur, which is interesting, and all of us are relatively successful. So we must have picked up something in that space. I think, and I'm probably going to go off on a rabbit hole with this. I had a very non-traditional upbringing. I used to joke around that we were in a cult and my dad was the cult leader because we bounced around all over the place. We moved multiple places so many times. I felt like he was always on the run. We must have had at least 15 different religions in and out of the house on a variety of bases. I've done kumbaya with monks and kumbaya with Mormons, and I've rode on bicycles with the Watchtower team. Like I've literally done everything. I've sang around campfires and interpreted Bible. And so my dad was really rigid and really structured and very, very highly conservative. And so, some of the things that I now look back on in retrospect that I picked up was resilience, fortitude, discipline, hard work. I mean, I was an entrepreneur by age 5 mowing lawns, and because we didn't have any money. And so there's a lot of things that I don't think he consciously was trying to pass on to us, but we picked up because it was like, what do they say about necessity? Like something I forget. The life is, when necessity requires things, like we just become creatures that there's a saying around necessity. What is that?
I'm a quote person. I'm not sure.
I'll get it before the show ends. Next question, please. Sorry, I bungled that last part there.
No, you're totally good. I actually had a kind of a question on, especially the religious part, which I find immensely interesting. And if you don't have a good answer, we can kind of move on. But what is the similarity between the religions that kind of draws people in, and kind of, if you can, turn that into like a marketing answer of like, what are people latching onto that brings people into each, like not each religion, but religion as a whole? Because I think you've seen so many.
I think that in the end of, when it all comes down to the end of it, necessity is the mother of invention. I've heard of this one, right?
Yeah.
I knew I was going to get to it. I think when it all really boils down to what we are as humans, we're a tribal species. We're a communal species. We are meant to work together. We are meant to collaborate. We're not designed to be in silos. We're not designed to be sitting in cubicles for 8 hours a day. We're not designed to be sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day. We're designed to be outside in nature, cohabitating, collaborating, and building things together. And if religion, not to go esoteric here, but if religion has one participle that adds value, it's that it brings people together and it brings people into a community, and it allows people to have sort of a common rhetoric that they can align themselves with. And in terms of business, I mean, that is what business is being able to build a brand that resonates on an emotional level with your ideal buyer, your ideal customer, and in the process build a community of raving fans around what you do so that they become your disciples, like Christians or Mormons or whomever it is becomes disciples of their religion. You want to attract people to your business, to your brand, so they become disciples for you. I mean, like, it's free PR. If you engage with a client and you do a qualitative bang ass job for them, what are they going to do? Next time I need somebody in your profession, who are they going to recommend? Dude, I know this guy named Josh Hoffman. Like, he did this for me, he did that for me. And so you've built this community around your business, your ethos, and so religion, business, branding, that's sort of, those are the parallels for me, if I may. I guess that's the best thing I can come up with.
I think that was a great answer. I threw in the like, hey, can you turn it into a marketing answer somehow, or a business answer? I was like, hey, good luck at doing that. And I think you knocked that one out of the park. So that was perfect. And then just one more thing on kind of like your upbringing, because I do want to just get an understanding of like who you are and how that led to, you starting a business. What type of kid were you?
I was the black swan in my family. I was my mom's favorite, my dad's least favorite, and my two older brothers' least favorite. But I was close to my younger sisters. I didn't really know my older sisters. It's really cool because I've recently had sort of a resurrection or a reunion with one of my oldest sister, and I've never really known her. I mean, we're like 20 years apart, and like growing up, what am I going to have in common with my 20-year-old sister when I'm 5 years old? So I was always sort of a bubble pusher. I like to always sort of, and I got in a lot of trouble all the time. Just kind of always just kind of getting into I never really understood it before. I just, the way of doing things like everyone else does, like our story at the outset, I'm not going to get in line and wait. Like I'm just going to find a different way, a different channel. So I've always been kind of an outlier of ways. I was homeschooled until I went to 6th grade, so I didn't really have that social development of peers growing into school, so that affected who I became. My dad was very abusive, so I had that to deal with in psychology. My parents were sort of non-existent by the time I was going into high school. In fact, I lived with my 5 oldest siblings by ourselves for almost 2 years in a little house 3-4 hours away from my parents. So I suppose we should all probably lay down on a sofa and have a therapy session with a psychologist on this podcast, because there's a lot of trauma that I've had to deal with and things that I've had to take care of over the years to kind of like right my ship. But all in all, I would say that I don't regret my upbringing, just because it's enabled me to sort of become who I am today and have this perspective, which is rather unique from most people I speak to. So I guess that would be my answer to that question.
I appreciate the last part too, because I was going to ask you, would you erase it if you could? Would you, like take it away? And not only I've asked that a couple times, and everyone has said no. But I actually took that question from another podcast, The Diary of a CEO, and it was his number one most popular guest that he had. And that person, I think it was his concept. And he said it was like 99.9% of people. They asked like 1,000 people or more than that if they would erase their traumas and things like that. And it was only like a handful said that they would, because it does make you who you are today. And I think that's kind of important. That's what I was trying to dig into.
Had you asked me that question 10 years ago, I probably have had a different answer. But whether through my own innate wisdom or my own innate experiences and growing up and my context and all the things, I've sort of moved into this space of understanding that the universe operates on a duality, and there is no such thing as good without bad. There is no such thing as light without dark. So not having those dark experiences might have completely changed the trajectory of who I am today. And that's not to say that I wouldn't be any better or worse. I'm just saying, like, who am I to say that those were bad and I should have experienced them? I don't know.
Well, one of my favorite just topics to talk about is not even to talk about, to try to understand is I have this like obsession of what makes a successful person, and a subcategory within that is I really want to understand what's the difference between two people that went through something similar, really bad, and one person kind of used that as positive motivation to do something great, and the other one ended up becoming, depressed or just didn't use that. I don't want to say properly, but like didn't use that to up themselves or to level up themselves. And I guess I'll ask you, like, what do you think is the difference between someone who takes that kind of experience and turns it into good in their life and starts a company or whatever it is, versus someone who just kind of stays in that realm and doesn't do much with it?
So all things being equal.
All things being equal, exactly.
So two Deevos went through the exact same experience as a child. We went to the same college and stuff.
That's exactly right.
Well, I would think that it would have something to do with the mindset and the glass half full or half empty, and how do you we always have a choice in how we respond, right? And we talked about this at the outset, and we don't always make the best choices in our responses to mechanisms. We could always make better choices, and ultimately, it's our choices. I read the greatest thing this morning in one of my morning meditations. It's like a Stoic book on meditations, and Marcus
have it within arm's reach. Yeah.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius is the author, and
Did we talk about that last time?
no, but I have that same book. That's amazing. I love it. Yeah. So in one of his meditations, he talks about, we cast blame on all of these things that happen to us when they don't when they're not received favorably, and we put all this attention on the fault giver from our perception instead of looking at it from a different perspective, more inwardly. If you were to curse me out on the phone right now, or the gentleman this morning who did the rant with his car, I could have just been like, okay, cool, I'm sorry, it's no big deal, and the whole situation could have been probably averted, but I chose to engage, and it became a little bit awkward. So I had a choice in how I responded to that. So I would say ultimately the difference is that Deevo number one and Deevo number two had a different response mechanism. And instead of me, and again, if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, when I was in college, I was an angry motherfucker. I joined the inner city boxing team in Hartford, Connecticut, because I played football in college, and I ended up getting hurt. And so I didn't really have an outlet of sports. And so I joined boxing because I realized in a conversation with some really important people in my life that I was carrying a lot of trauma around with me, a lot of anger with me. And so I joined the boxing team so that I could have an outlet. And that didn't really fix anything. So then I turned to therapy to sort of deal with how I respond to things. And so I know I'm going a different direction than you had hoped, but just to be vulnerable, I can tell you that we do always have a choice in how we respond to everything. And I would suspect that the people who have a better outcome are generally the people that choose a more optimal response to everything, every trigger, every failure, every inopportunity, anything that ever happens to them that doesn't go advantageously for them. Devo number one would choose the lighter response, and Devo number two would choose the blame response, and it's your fault that I suck. It's your fault that.
Well, do you think there's a way of turning Devo number two? Like, how would you turn Devo number two into Devo number one, or does that person just need to go through their own shit and at some point realize that they're not moving forward, they're moving back, and then try to change it?
Bitch slap him across the face and say, dude, there's a different way to do things. I think there's a couple of things, man. I think introspective awareness, learning to find a time and a place to be by yourself and understand who you are and how you operate and have some quiet time by yourself is one way. Therapy is another. Finding good group of peers and mentors to surround yourself with. It's very important that you surround yourself with quality people. You become a byproduct of the 6 people you hang around with most. And if the 6 people that you're surrounding yourself are assholes, you're going to become an asshole. So, there's a variety of different things, and no one thing is necessarily the right way to improve. I would say as an individual, you just have to understand who you are and what you bring to the table and what are your problems, and understand what your fallacies are, and then be prepared to seek out ways to change yourself because you're interested in becoming a better version of yourself than the asshole that you currently are.
I think that's great, and I kind of want to tie that actually into the next topic, because I really want to stay on the topic of kind of like creating positive change, and doing things that might be out of one's comfort level, because you participate in something that I actually think could really help the world, and I think we're moving in this direction, and that's actually microdosing. So can you share why you started and if it's had an impact on you?
Yeah, I've always just had I can't explain it. I first got turned on to it by an article many years ago, and I was just intrigued by it. And, they say, Buddha says, when the student is ready, the messenger arrives. And so for me, it was just sort of like a genuine curiosity around it. I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs. I rarely drink alcohol. I like a good glass of wine, although my wife introduced me to vanilla-infused Crown Royal this past weekend, and I was like, what in the hell is this? So I need to make sure that I police myself around that. I think that for me, it started off as just a genuine curiosity, and I had read a lot of stories, and I just finished reading his book on microdosing and psilocybins, and I forget his name. He lived in the woods for like 50 years and did this whole documentary on. I forget his name.
Tenneman guy, or
Yeah, that's right. And he has a really cool book on.
It's his protocol. It's his whole 2 days off, 1 day on. That book.
No, it's something to do with the gods. Something of the name of the book. It'll pop into my head. I'm not good at recalling things like that. Anyway, I was just genuinely curious in sort of I've always been curious about the metaphysical connection. So I grew up with God in my life and all these different religions. And so I've never really believed in any one theory. I just had a lot of hypotheses about a bunch of different things. And I'm fascinated by that sort of macrocosm relationship of humans and this idea of God. And then I started, exploring, there's plant-based medicines and all the different effects and the shamans and the things that they espouse to. And then I started diving into like Native American histories and like all the different things that they did. And I was like, the further I went down the rabbit hole, the further I started to realize that the information that we have been given was misinformation in order to guide us down a different rabbit hole of someone else's choosing, right? And so it's one of the reasons I started my podcast, Unlearn Everything, is I started realizing that everything we have been told is a lie. Literally everything we have been told is a lie, from politics to economics to relationships to sex to God to the universe to literally everything has been a lie. And one of those things that I discovered was that plant-based medicine was also a lie. It has been ostracized so that they could push us into the direction of alcohol, for example. Alcohol is one of the single biggest poisons on the planet. Like,
as well as pharmaceuticals. I put pharmaceuticals in there as well. Yeah.
Alcohol, pharmaceuticals, the same thing. But they're literally poisons. And I'm not to say that there aren't benefits from pharmaceuticals. Like, I know there are certain situations, right? Situational experiences where we should potentially engage in that. But we got into that situation because of poor diet, because of poor health choices, because of our own choosing, right? We have a choice, right? And so anyway, it turns out I'm going somewhere really long that you probably didn't want to hear, but I got into this sort of like discovery of what it can do to people's bodies and how it can literally change paradigms. And it may just be that you're just loopy and so everything doesn't matter in the first place because you just but it's not. And what it turned out is that it enabled me to have a broader perspective on things, and it softened the edges for me. It gave me answers to things that I wasn't quite sure about. It just sort of, it's like I had all these questions and ideas about things, but I didn't really know how to formulate answers for them. And it's enabled me to sort of move into a better fostering of answers around stuff than I had before doing it. Does that make sense? That's the long and short of it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and a few notes on that. And I think we might have talked about this on a Discovery call, but the book *Sapiens* is actually a lot. It tells the story of essentially humans, but it actually every section that is really about how everything is built on these myths, from capitalism to agriculture to all these things that we just choose to believe in. And there's no law that says capitalism is the right move. We just, as humans, just believe it. Same thing with laws, same thing with everything. And I always thought that was really interesting. I'm also wondering, it was a female, not a male, but I don't know if you were talking about Maria Sabina as the person in the woods. She's kind of like she brought a lot of this into Western culture and things like that. So she's very important in this conversation. But speaking of drugs, I'd love to hear your opinion on caffeine.
Well, that's funny because I do have a pretty strong opinion on caffeine. I used to be, I'm looking for behind me to find the book. It's somewhere behind me. I used to be a caffeine addict and I was a bougie caffeine dude. And I'm talking about coffee in the forms of caffeine. I don't drink, and for anybody who's listening, Starbucks is not coffee. This is a completely different conversation. But caffeine coffee was sort of like my predilection, my vice, if you will. And I had no idea what it was until I actually met somebody in Mexico who turned me on to someone else, and ended up being like a rabbit hole of discovery. And this guy named Dr. Stephen Chernisky, who has dedicated his life to understanding what caffeine in coffee is and what it does to your body. And so anyway, I read his book, hunted him down. He lives in California somewhere now. He's retired. He came on my podcast. We had like a 3-hour conversation on caffeine, coffee, and like everything and its origins and where it came from. And just long and short of it, you need to do your own research. Again, everything I say is based upon my context and my learning and my information, so everyone can receive their information in their own way. What I discovered in my research around it is that caffeine is a poison. It's a false high that gives you. It does not actually make you more energetic. It actually makes you less energetic, but it tricks your mind into thinking that you're more energetic. But it affects your neurotransmission of your brain, and it's known now, scientifically known, that it aids in cognitive decline. It aids in gastral reflux. It aids in deteriorating your stomach lining and all sorts of different things. And there's a bevy of things that it does. And so I gave up coffee cold turkey now going on 3 years ago. And I don't drink it anymore. I don't drink soda. I try to stay away from caffeine whenever I possibly can, but coffee specifically, I don't drink it.
No, I know, we kind of talked about this briefly last time, but I was never a big coffee drinker, and I kept finding myself tired throughout the day, and I would try different things, change up my diet, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I've always been fairly active, but taking caffeine out of my mornings, especially, gave me more energy throughout the day. I did switch over to black and green tea because a warm drink in the morning is just like really nice. Do you do black or green tea at all, or pretty much?
I'm still trying to find this book for you. I actually drink, and here's a plug for the company that I drink from, and I don't get paid to do this, but I drink a mushroom adaptogenic tea.
Mud water?
And no, I tried mud water. Mud water actually has caffeine in it. It's called Rasa, Rasa, and they are an adaptogenic tea that has replaced my coffee, and they have all sorts of really good flavors. And I own I have it on auto refill. I own a bag of everything that they have, from chais to what's the chocolate cacao. They have a cacao tea. So yeah, I've been drinking that now going on 3 years, and I actually like it more than coffee.
I'm trying. I did the mud water. I wasn't a huge fan. I actually do athletic greens now.
Oh yeah, my wife does that,
which is great. I promote athletic greens to everyone. It's the only like supplement or drink where like after a week I was like, I won't explain what was the difference, but I was like, there's a big difference. And I feel like you take a multivitamin, you don't really know until you're like 90 years old if it did anything. Athletic Greens might be like the biggest sponsor for podcasts ever, is how I got into it, and it's great. So now I guess as we start to get into business questions, I want to talk about a phrase that you previously mentioned to me, which is people developer, like quote unquote people developer. What does that mean?
People developer, people collector. So for me, I believe we talked about the community early on. I've just always believed that people working together in a collaborative capacity is the best way to operate your life. And so that all starts with relationships and how you treat people and how people treat you back. And I've always just built my reputation on collecting people, in a sense that if you need somebody, is a pretty good chance that I have somebody in my phone that I can connect you with. And I firmly believe, that's one of my personal philosophies, is that it's one of the ways that you can operate business. It's the best way to operate life, is to build relationships around people that add value and be able and willing to share those resources with other people. And I do it with no strings attached, because I get shared with information all the time. I mean, just today I had 2 people that I got connected with for fantastic business opportunities and some other opportunities. And so one of them actually involves a coffee farm in Nicaragua. Go figure. Yeah. But anyhow, yeah, it's just for me. It's all about people, man. Every like your show, like how we're all just directly reflective mirrors, right? And how you treat people is how you're going to get treated in return. So if you're a curmudgeon or you're an asshole and you're angry, and Deevo number 2, who is half glass full or half glass empty, I always get those 2 confused, which one is which. And just, it's woe is me. It's everyone else's fault. It's not my fault that I suck. It's not my fault that I'm single. It's not my fault my business sucked. It's everyone else's fault. I got the best. You're going to continue to see that. You're just perpetuating an endless vicious cycle of that narrative. Whereas on the other hand, if you try to look at everything as an opportunity for growth. Everything is a lesson to learn. Everyone is a connection to grow with. Everyone is worthy of building a relationship. And everyone's not ever building a worthy relationship. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying like, oh, this is like this perfect world. But my perspective is that there's an opportunity to learn, grow, adapt, change, evolve in every situation. And that involves building relationships with people and then sharing those relationships with people so that other people can benefit from it as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors is Ryan Holiday, who writes a lot about Stoicism, or it's all about Stoicism. I think he's probably the leader in getting Stoic thoughts out there. And his book, which I did read, but I think that just the title alone gets the entire point across, which is Obstacle is the Way. Mm-hmm. And I think when people start to almost like appreciate obstacles as opposed to like blaming them, I think that is, Deevo 1, Deevo 2, I think that's kind of where you can start to split where people can kind of move forward in their lives as opposed to continuing to blame. So I think that was really interesting.
Dude, it's really interesting to say that. I just did a podcast yesterday. I'll give this guy over to you. He's a really cool dude. He's from Germany. His name is Mark Seuss. And he's really cool. He's a guitarist. He runs an art gallery over there. Anyway, we did a podcast yesterday just because I love talking to him. He's now going to be joining my mastermind, by the way, which I want to talk to you about as well. And anyway, we did this whole conversation on discomfort and comfort and how we can use discomfort to grow. And like, it's the only way we can grow. It's like, we don't grow. If everything is perfect in flowery fields, what reason do we have to change, right? If everything is perfect and we don't have any trauma, like what reason is there to change? And so it's only through discomfort, it's only through pain, it's only through lessons and that we are able to learn new opportunities. So fantastic. I love Ryan Holiday, and I have basically, I think probably everything he's ever written. So yes.
I do as well. Actually, the Stoic book that you were talking about earlier is probably his biggest book.
Is it the 365 journals?
Yes. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
That's Ryan Holiday. I'm sick in the mind and I love being uncomfortable. The worse the situation, the more I just like love it. To me, it's just a better story. A lot of it is a better story, as well as, toughening up and all that kind of stuff. But I totally hear you on that one. And now I guess I'd like to turn a little bit more towards your branding firm, Fusion Creative Brand, because part of our goal, obviously, with this podcast is to build a community among our guests that promotes referrals and support. And that's really what we're kind of aiming the podcast for. So a few questions about the business, and then obviously, how you can get and receive referrals. The first question is just, how did you guys start? How did you get like your first customer?
Well, my first customers came from because I have another business, Fusion Photography, and I've been doing that full time since 2006. And so all of my early clients came from that business. And again, it's about relationships and how you nurture those and cultivate them. So it was, I'm not going to say it was easy, but I already had sort of a Trojan horse, if you will, entryway into this realm of the world, because my business centers around telling people stories. And Fusion Photography is a storytelling photography agency at its heart. Like I pride myself on photojournalistic lifestyle, more editorial, candid, tell your story photography and video. And so I've always sort of made my business in that profession. And, I've shot weddings and engagement sessions and headshots and family sessions and boudoir sessions. I've been doing that, since really 1998. I've been doing that. And at the heart of everything I did, it was telling your story. And so making this next leap into a different evolution of my business, it also centers around telling your story. But one of the value propositions that I solve with my business, which is sort of like how I'm in business, it's why anyone's in business, what problem do you solve, right? Was I was already creating content, and I started making a metamorphosis for my business around 2018. I started kind of moving away from weddings just because I didn't have time to shoot weddings because my kids were growing up. I was missing all their activities. They're athletes. They're just involved in a plethora of activities. They're very social. And I was like working Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and all week long, and I just wasn't seeing them. So I had to start looking for ways to evolve my business so that I had more freedom and more opportunities to be with my kids. And one of the gaps that I noticed was that I wasn't doing a lot of business type of work, and I was getting a lot of requests for it, but because I had never done it before, I was just sort of like, no, it's not really my cup of tea, because I was niching into very specific industries, right? But then I was like, let me just do a couple of these gigs and just see what it's like. And I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I like this. So I was shooting content for podcasters or social media influencers or small businesses or CEOs, and I was doing all this really cool editorial stuff for them. And but I started to notice, because this is now around when social media, I started diving into social media around 2017, I guess. I really dove headlong into it. And I started noticing that my photos were not appearing on any of the channels. And so I started reaching out to all of my clients, and I was like, what's going on here? Like, we just finished a fantastic session, but I don't see anything anywhere. And they're like, yeah, Deevo, funny you ask. I just don't know what to do with it. Like, I just don't really know what to do with it. And so I had this idea of, what if I could bridge the gap between content, strategy, and deployment? And so I started like helping clients. It was sort of more on an ad hoc capacity. I know so many people, and so I knew a social media manager. I'm pretty good at social media myself. I knew copywriters. I knew web developers. I knew SEO people. So I started like plugging and playing little solutions. Like, let's just take you for example. You had this great content shoot that I had done for you, but you didn't really know what to do with it. I was like, hey, Josh, I can take your content. I can put it on social media for you. I can get you on a website, like all these different things. Well, I don't have a website. Well, I know somebody who can build websites. So let me get you. So anyhow, you can see where I'm going with this. And so one thing just led to the next, and before you knew it, I sort of was getting these different business things, opportunities, because I had treated these people just as well as I had treated my other clients. So I was getting referrals and all these things. And so I was like, okay, this now is at the point where I have to build a business around this. And so that I just made a complete shift, and had a couple of goes at it. I had a former partner that didn't work out so well, so I had to get rid of that. I sold my portion of the business to her. Then I relaunched roughly a year ago with this new business, Fusion Creative. And in a nutshell, what we do is we help entrepreneurs, CEOs, small businesses tell their story. And then we take that story and then amplify it on traditional, non-traditional, digital, traditional channels so that they can connect with their ideal audience.
If you want to get back into the boudoir pictures, I'll go in a bathtub with a Speedo, and we can do some pictures or something.
I like it. I like it.
All right, around,
and then I'll help you proliferate that to a larger audience.
That's right. Well, actually, because that was actually and maybe you just answered this, but what services do you guys provide?
So at the core of it, it's branding first and foremost, because I believe, and if I may go on my soapbox for a minute, most entrepreneurs have it reversed. They think that they should market first and then figure out their story second. And just think about that for a minute. It's like, it's just how many rework loops do you throw yourself into because of that? And so first and foremost, we teach people how to clarify their brand message. And brand message is not your logo. It's not your website. It's everything. It's literally every single touch point on your customer journey. And so we crystallize that message so that everything that they believe in, everything that they started their business for, their missions, their values, every single reason why you started your podcast, now you have sanctimonious clarity on what it is, what it does, why it does it, how you do it, and what problem you solve. And then we take that information, and based upon every client, you have a different type of strategy and a solution. So website design, SEO for the website, some paid advertising, although I don't really like playing in that sandbox, so I'm kind of slowly pulling out. Copywriting, helping you with email funnels, and website development are sort of our core products. And social media management. Sorry, we manage all of our clients' social media for them. So again, it's brand message, brand strategy, brand amplification, spread the word.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't know where I heard this from, but I think branding is naturally a very hard thing to measure, if not next to impossible. So I always like the definition of branding is branding is simply just what others are saying about your business, and obviously, what goes into that is your effort, whether it's all the things that you said. But I always like the definition of branding is just what other people say about your business, because that is the byproduct or the result of everything that you just put out there. So. And again, I think you were kind of tapping into this next question, but how can you work with other marketing agencies, or what services can you partner with other agencies? So in other words, what do other agencies tend to reach out to you for?
Content creation is one of the biggest. A lot of agencies don't have that service in-house. So photography, video marketing, anything centered around graphic design, graphic development, any of that stuff to put how people receive you on a physical product so that they can see it, taste it, smell it, etc. And then we do a lot of strategy consulting also as well. So for whatever reason, we have some clients that don't really know the direction they want to take their business, or they have a new product they want to launch. They're not really sure how to take that to market. I've just started working with an art gallery here in Charlotte that's been around for years, but because of social media, for example, and how people perceive art, there's been a dramatic shift in people actually going to galleries. So how do you modernize a gallery experience? And so, there's ways that you can do that, in my opinion. And so we're starting to work with them on that. And but yeah, by and large, it centers around content strategy and then the proliferation of that stuff.
And then essentially turning that question upside or the other way, what services do you tend to partner with the most? So, what services are closely aligned to yours that you might not have an internal staff for and need help with?
Brand strategy, brand messaging, really getting that branding, that brand perception, that brand messaging. We have a patented product. It's a brand discovery process that we take you through. It's a pretty rigorous 2 full-day workshop where we come on site, or we do it over Zoom, of course, with you, your team, whomever are your senior stakeholders, and really sort of reorient the core values of what your company is. What do they do? What problems do they solve? What's their mission? What's their value alignments, and all that, all the different types of messaging that you would need your team to be clear on, so that you're speaking the same language that you want your customers to understand. You just talked about perception. So that's probably our core product that we offer.
Perfect. And then a few questions I ask at the end. If you had to teach something to other marketers, what would it be?
I hate that our show's coming to an end. It's been so much fun.
Yeah.
If I had to teach things to other marketers, branding comes first. Branding is everything. If you don't think about our language right now, if you are speaking Mandarin and I'm speaking Hebrew, we're never going to connect on this, right? We're going to have to Google translate it, and there's a lot of time loss. There's everything lost in translation. And so your brand is your brand. Your brand messaging is everything. You need to get that down so that you, your team, anything that is associated with your business has consistency, clarity, and cohesion, so that when your customer reads it, they can align with that, and they understand the language that you're sharing, the problems that you solve. Because not everybody is your customer. Very specific types of people are your customer. And so you want to make sure that the language that you're speaking to them is the language they understand and that speaks to their problem. And then you get an alignment on that. So branding first, marketing second.
Baruch atah, Adonai Eloheinu melech
Well
that's my
done.
Hebrew. It's also like the most basic beginning to the prayer. So I was likely saying like, praise are you Adonai, our God, really universe.
You were supposed to be speaking Mandarin. I was Hebrew.
I know, but I was like, I don't know a single word in Mandarin, so I'm going to steal your Hebrew on that one. Shalom. I know dog means fish. I think that's what they taught us.
Okay.
A couple more questions. Are you guys looking to hire any positions right now?
I don't know that we're looking to hire any positions. We're always looking for partners that have viable solutions that we could either sell for you, that we could white glove, or we could just have a collaboration with. And there's always things out there that I may not know about that my clients may need. And so my model centers around collaborations. We have a core team of in-house people, but our business model, again, it's all about the relationships and the collaborations and the partnerships. And so I want to be able to say, if you need X, I'm going to go out and find it for you. And so that you don't have to spend that time and energy doing that.
And then my last and final question, or I was going to say last and my favorite question, you got the perfect background for this. So any book, podcast, or newsletter recommendations?
I've got so many books. I'm currently rereading Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Effective Leaders, I believe it's called. Phenomenal, life-changing, really just really exceptional book. And then I'm a big history buff, so I'm into reading Bill O'Reilly. He used to be a Fox commentator. He has partnered with another author, and I always forget the other author's name, but he takes historical figures like Abraham Lincoln, and he rewrites their history so that, because the narrative we've been told is mostly false. So I'm currently I've read Abraham Lincoln, now I'm reading General Patton, which was one of the most famous American generals of all time, and how he was thrown under the bus and basically killed because he was ostracized and did not agree with the American version of post-war Germany.
Martin Dugard.
There you go. There you go.
Co-author's name.
Good book. Really, it's a really well written book. Everything that they do has been good.
And then, of course, all the Stoic little books that we mentioned. Ryan Holiday, anything Marcus Aurelius. Actually, technically, it's just one thing of Marcus Aurelius. It was his notebook that someone found and I guess eventually published. He never wanted to get it out, which I think is actually the most amazing thing about meditations is those were his notes. And like, there's so much when you're writing for yourself, like as in a journal, and you're not writing for other people, you're just a lot more honest with everything. And I think that's what makes that book so amazing is that it was literally his journal. And it's like this emperor of Rome that is writing like these, my life is tough and this is how I should have handled it and things like that. So I think
little known fact, technically speaking, a lot of the work in his journal is actually not his work. It was he received work from other people. Yeah. And he credits this if you dive deep into it. And then he took all of the works that he had received, he interpolated and extracted stuff that he wanted, that resonated with him, and then he rewrote about it. But and he's admitted this. You'll find it in other artifacts that most of the information that he compiled came from other sources that he found to be inspiring. Not to mention, he was a great scholar and a great mind, philosopher, and all the things. I'm not saying that he wasn't. He founded. I believe he was one of the founders. Seneca, I believe, as well, was one of the founders of Stoicism. But a lot of the works in that journal itself are not actually his original work, interestingly enough.
Very interesting. And then the third, it's Seneca, him, and oh my goodness, I'm totally blanking on the third.
Epictetus.
Thank you, Epictetus. Thank you very much. Read his book as well. Letters to someone.
He's got a bunch of good books. Epictetus. He's a bit of a bawdry young old fella, so I really like his stuff because he's he kind of went rogue, and he's more like in your face, like. He just tells it like it is. Well,
he's the one that was a slave, right? And what I think is really interesting, and I'm supposed to get to the end here, but what I think is really interesting about the three main people, Zeno started it, but he just kind of came up with the word. But those three, they're three completely different lifestyles. One was the ruler of the world, essentially. One was a slave, and one was like a teacher. And I just think it's very fascinating that kind of these guys have the same general thought from three completely different lifestyles. So, but as we come up to the end of the episode, I just want to give you an opportunity to mention how people can find you and anything else you'd like to end with.
I think start with Instagram, Fusion Photog, Fusion Fusion Photog, short for photography. My website is Fusion Creative Branding. That's actually about to change. I've been for the last 6 months or so really focusing on my personal brand. And so you'll be able to find me pretty soon at deevotindall.com.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming on the show. And for those of you who have learned something new from this episode, please consider giving us a like or a follow so we can continue getting the highest quality guests. And as always, thank you for listening. Deevo, I love this. I love how we dove into Stoicism and everything. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you for the opportunity, man. It was a good show. Good conversation.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Masters in Marketing Agency podcast. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I just want to thank our sponsors, DevNoodle. DevNoodle provides marketing agencies with the ability to offer their clients unlimited website design, build, and management services with fixed monthly plans. If website design, development, and maintenance is holding your agency back from growing, please reach out to us at devnoodle.com, where we make websites easy for you and easy for your clients. devnoodle.com.